Hi, friends and friends of friends. Welcome to the Still Podcast Author Series Season 2. This season's guests are authors who write books for children, the young readers to teenagers, and even those who are still young at heart. During each episode, you will learn more about the writer and their books. I bet you will find a new author and new books to love. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoy an episode, please leave a comment or respond to one of the poll questions at the end of an episode, or follow me on one of my social accounts. And of course, tune in next time. Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Still Podcast Author Series. Joining me today is Turiya Dhara, author and Buddhist. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And feel free to correct me whenever I say anything wrong.
No, it's all good.
So you are a Buddhist, correct?
Yes.
But you're also a teacher, right?
I'm a Buddhist monk and I teach meditation, and I founded the practice of Turiya Buddhism.
You founded it. Okay.
I didn't mean to. But after teaching for 25 years, well, more than that, actually, I've had the Dharma Center of Turiya Buddhism for 25 years. We start off as just little Dharma Center, very eclectic. And after training people for years and years, and as the internet grew, people became more sophisticated. So they came in, they're like, well, what kind of meditation? Say Buddhist meditation. Well, what kind of Buddhism? So we eventually needed the name for what we do. So we are Turiya Buddhists.
Okay, excellent. And you've been doing that for 25 years?
Yeah, we've had the center for going on, this year will be 26.
Okay, and what led you to Buddhism?
I met, well, can I just tell you, my first experience of Buddhism was in a philosophy class in college, and they had us watch this little video, and it was about Zen Buddhism. And the office workers got there early in the morning in this little film, and they got in their little cubicles and faced the wall and meditated. And the supervisor came around with this really big stick, and anytime one of them like started to bend forward, he would just slam them with a stick. And I was like, oh my goodness, that Buddhism stuff is insane. I will never do that. And then,
oh, good. I was worried you're gonna be like, oh, I have to try that.
No, I was like, they're crazy. I don't get it. I don't need to be beaten with a stick. That's not for me. And so I went and I explored all these different teachings, different paths, everything. And then I finally just gave up. I was like, there's nothing real. I'm not finding any actual truth. The people who are teaching aren't really happy. You know, they're kind of pretending, but I could see that it was a facade. And so I gave up completely. And then a friend of mine in college, I didn't see her for the summer, and then I saw her in the fall, and she was happy. She's bright. And I was like, what is going on? You know, I mean, she'd always been kind of, normal happy, but now she was like just practically glowing happy, like just really excited about life. So I'm like, what is going on? So she brought me to meet her mentor. And then that mentor brought me to meet her teacher. And immediately I was like, oh, that's the guy. And he was literally glowing and just very bright and happy. And he actually took these very ancient Buddhist teachings and presented it in a way that Americans could understand. So he never set up a school. He never felt the need to put his teachings in a box. What he would do is he would say, change over time. He was always, throwing us curveballs and saying, this is what we're teaching, learning now. And then we'd be all on board. Okay, I finally get it. And then be like, forget all that stuff. We're going to look at it this way. And he'd flip it around 180 degrees. And so that taught me to like move my mind in different ways. And that's what Buddhism is really about. It's about learning how the mind works instead of trying to control it and control the world. It's really just about learning how your mind works. And then you can interact with the world and be very happy and peaceful.
Okay, I love how you say that. That sounds like one of your books, Peace with Pain, Your Guide to Life in a Malfunctioning Body.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. So that my practice saved my life, literally. I mean, I had started working and I followed my teacher's program. He was very into computer programming. He was very into personal development, saying, you need to be able to pay to have a nice home to live in. So we're not going to go hide in a monastery this lifetime. We're going to go corporate America. So we all went to New York, learned business. I got into computer science. And then after it was too cold for me in New York, basically. So I wound up moving to San Diego, and I had my dream job. I'm living coast to coast. My clients in New York. This is the 1990s. So I'm telecommuting before it was a thing. And my body just started collapsing. Like I would literally be in my chair working on a program and I'd slowly collapse and fall on the floor. And then I wouldn't be able to get up for a half hour, and doctor, like literally stuck on the floor.
Mhm.
My husband busted me one day. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can't get up." He's like, "You gonna do something about that?" I'm like, "I suppose." So then I started going to the doctors. But because my practice, it was like, okay, I'm on the floor now. I'm just gonna lay here and meditate. So I went through, long, long saga. I wound up writing Peace with Pain. It took me 12 years to write because I could only sit at the computer for 15 minutes at a time, a day. Basically 15 minutes a day. I could be on the computer. I lost my big fancy computer job, I couldn't even telecommute.
Mhm.
I'm completely disabled, but I was still happy, which is really bizarre dealing with doctors who are like, "Well, you must be depressed." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Well, I'm sad my body doesn't work, but honestly, no, I'm actually happy." Because I have my practice, and going into these really intense dark mind states and discovering that there's still joy there woke me up to a whole new way of being and seeing. And so I wanted to share that with the world. So I wrote Peace with Pain. And that was when I still didn't know what was wrong with my body, but I wanted to show people, like, even if you don't know what's wrong and you're in pain, you can still be happy.
Okay, and that's got to be very powerful because there's tons of those mysterious ailments and illnesses, and it takes the doctors a really long time to figure out. So what a wonderful treat to have that book. Well, now,
Yeah.
was that your first book you wrote?
No, my first book was actually Worlds of Power, Worlds of Light. And that's the story of how I met my teacher. And
Okay, and teacher means Buddha.
yes,
Right. So it's interesting. So for this season, I'm trying to focus on the young adult and middle grade. So, children, teenagers. And the first two authors I've had on my podcast are Christian fantasy writers. One of them has a ton of dragons. One of them, Candy, has, a ton of dragons in hers, where Alan was like, I didn't want to put a dragon in, but his fans like demanded it. We want a dragon, right? But they're very Christian based. Some of them are biblical retellings. And so I really like having this balance of now we've got a Buddhist. I teach in a public school. So when we teach one religion, we teach another religion. We teach, we have to give like equal balance, if
yeah,
you will.
that's good. Yeah,
But now I've got to ask, there's a lot of controversy, not controversy, I guess, different opinions on if Buddhism is a religion because you're not worshiping a deity, right?
right.
What do you say?
Well, I struggled with that question for a really long time
Mhm.
because there was a lot of baggage, I guess you can say, from my previous religious experiences. It wasn't bright and happy. And so and I think this is true for a lot of people I've talked to, where they're like, "No, I will never be part of a religion."
Mhm.
And they just shut down that part of themselves. But I think religion has a broader definition for me now.
Okay.
So I would say yes, Trikaya Buddhism is a religion. We do have a spiritual practice. And no, we don't worship a deity because we
Mhm.
don't see anything separate from ourselves. So Buddha, the historical Buddha, was very interesting in that he would never answer metaphysical questions. Anytime somebody would ask him about God or about anything that was beyond right now, he'd always bring up, well, what difference does it actually make to your life right now?
Okay.
So if you believe in God or not, it doesn't really matter in terms of your peace and happiness right now, because that's already within you. That's from a Buddhist perspective. I know a Christian perspective would argue with me, but
Oh, right, definitely.
as,
But
as a Buddhist, I'll tell you, no, happiness and joy are here right now. There's nothing that you need to do to experience that. But what you do have to do is address all the conditioning, all these ideas, all these structures in your mind that have put you in a box that separates you from that. And honestly, I use the terms God sometimes, eternity, awareness, because there is something that or it which is larger than our egos, which is larger than our human awareness, and that plays a part in our practice.
so now, unreasonable joy awakening through Triyaka Buddhism. Did I
Yeah,
say it correct?
trikaya.
Tri
Trikaya.
Trikaya. Oh my gosh.
No,
So,
everybody does that. I don't know why, like we want to, in English, we want to like make the consonant go with the syllable, but it's just Trikaya, 3 bodies.
okay. Unreasonable Joy, Awakening Through Trikaya Buddhism. Is that your most recent book?
Yes, it is. That
Okay.
one, it's about awakening through Trikaya Buddhism. It's the teachings of Trikaya Buddhism. There's a very short poem that sums up the whole path. I have it on a website, trikayabuddhism.org, and it's called the Pith Instructions. And what I do in the book is I take each stanza and then do a commentary and then elaborate on it with different essays that I had posted on my blog. And it's a way that people can explore for themselves, because it's, as I said, Buddhism is very self-exploratory. It doesn't matter what, well, to me, see, even in Buddhist circles, people argue with me and I'm wrong. But to me, it's not about my teacher said this because his teacher said that and their teacher said this. To me, it's about, this is the theory that's being presented. Let me investigate that and see if it's true. So I'll tell people you should meditate every day, twice a day is better, where meditation means that you sit and you concentrate until you actually stop thought. And that will unlock your mind and you'll be able to start to see through your conditioning. And I can tell you that, but it doesn't mean anything until you actually try it and do it.
Okay. Learning through doing. It's always a good one.
Exactly. Yeah. So I tell my students, the path can be really summed up in 2 words. It's just pay attention.
And is it the book to your right, or at least my right?
Um,
Oh, behind that one. Is it that book?
It's this one, and it's got really beautiful drawings in it. I found a tattoo artist, and he let me use his art, Yoni Zubler, and so I peppered it. So
Very
it's got
nice.
this beautiful artwork in it. I actually had somebody send me a picture they had taken it and used it as a coloring book. Because
Yeah.
they're all black and white images, so she colored in some of it and sent it to me on social media.
I got really into the mindfulness coloring thing a few years ago, so I have a ton of those like mindfulness coloring books. I can definitely see that. So now, if I'm one, kind of curious about Triyaka Buddhism
Try
and
Kaya.
Trikaya, if I'm really wanting to know more about Trikaya Buddhism and just Buddhism in general, which book do you think would be the best for a beginner?
Well, it really depends on how you like to learn. If you like to learn through stories, then I would say Worlds of Power, Worlds of Light, because it's just this story of this 22-year-old gal that meets this amazing Buddha and has this adventure into these very bright worlds. But if you read it carefully, there's actually teachings all through the book.
And this is your story, right?
Yes. And I know it says Jenna Sundell, but I am publishing under Turiya Dhara. It's my spiritual name now. So you'll see a lot of my books will have both names.
Okay.
And this one is actually going to be released soon in Spanish. And then I have somebody working on a Hungarian
Oh, wow.
translation as well. And I still have to ask, but I'm hoping they'll do, I have some friends that speak Japanese, so I'm going to ask them to do Japanese version.
Nice.
But that was just a fun story. And like I said, the lessons where you could actually start practicing are in there if you read it carefully. If you want an actual how-to book, then that's Peace with Pain, one of the very first pages. I think this one doesn't do as well because people expect a self-help book, but it's not written like a self-help book because I don't give a lot of theory. I just kind of throw you in. So like right at the beginning, we have the short instructions on how to meditate, how to practice mindfulness. And then it just goes into and it has little take action exercises at the end of
Okay.
the chapter.
Okay. And then can I see the cover just one more
Oh,
time?
sure.
Because I see those rocks stacked on top of each other in a lot of random places. And I was pretty sure it was a Buddhist thing, something to do with balance and markers and
I don't know. I know in wilderness and some trails,
Mhm.
they'll make cairns, it's called, and there'll be actual trail markers. And then I've seen signs like, because as part of our practice, we'll go spend time in nature and we'll go walk around. I've seen some trails will actually have a sign at the beginning asking people, please don't make your own stacks, because the ones that the rangers have made are actually trail markers. So, but yes, it does bring a connotation of balance and stability and support. And then if you want to, go really deep in the practice, then, I suggest the Unreasonable Joy. And really you can start with any of them, including the one for teenagers, the awkward years.
I'm so glad you brought up the teenagers, the awkward years. So is it the awkward years?
64 tips for surviving high school.
Okay. And I love that because it kind of ties into the young adult middle grade theme I have going this season. So the awkward years, 64 tips for surviving high school. How long ago did you publish that?
This one came out in 2018. And what happened is my nieces and nephews live on the other side of the country. And I don't get to see them very often. I only see them every few years. And they were just growing up so fast. They're actually, most of them have graduated high school now. I think two of them are still in high school. But it got to this point where every time I went back to see them, I wanted to tell them like all these little things, and I started thinking about it and I started writing them down. And I realized, well, if I go back for a trip to see them for a few days, I can't just clobber a 13-year-old with all this information. It's just not going to happen. So I took this little list of things that I had started and I wrote it down and put it together. And I had shown it to a couple of friends and they were like, wow, this would have been useful when I was a teenager. So I wrote it all down for them and put it together in a book of just little things. Some are very ordinary, like sweat. A little thing on sweat. As a teenager, it's never too early to start using deodorant. Everyone's sweat stinks. That's why they make so many different brands. If you get super sweaty under your arms, you may want to try one with an antiperspirant.
Yes.
Little things.
And I'm hoping they're trying that out in middle school.
Well, I had a student whose son she had two, one that was 13, one that was 11. And she said the 11-year-old really liked it too.
So, well, awesome. And you mentioned that someone just bought 40 copies.
40 copies. I checked, because I do some advertising on Amazon. Ironically, I don't advertise this book, but this is the one. Apparently somebody got a copy and they really liked it. So they went and bought 40 copies. And I'm guessing that they're giving it away they must be a teacher like you, or Amazon doesn't tell me who buys the books. I just see in the stats like, oh, wow.
Right. Well, so you think, oh, they're giving them away. And I think, oh, it's a teacher teaching them. So that's just me. If I was buying 40, that'd be a lot of students in a class. But yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah, so I was very excited. And I've been told like this particular book, even adults like it. Like there's this little one about choices, as we make choices all day long. Some are small, like what clothes to wear, and some are big, like deciding whether or not to go to a party. Part of growing up is learning to accept the responsibility of making a decision. Don't do anything just because other people are doing it. Stick to doing things because you have a reason for doing it that makes sense to you. And I've been told, like I said, some adults are like, hey, this is good stuff for me. Hopefully they know about the deodorant, but maybe they don't know about the choices.
No, that's great. I will have to buy a copy. I don't know. I have a few TAs. I'm trying to just 8th graders who are going on to high school next year. Well, might be a fun little gift. Nice.
Yes, please leave reviews. It's so hard as authors to get people to leave reviews.
Right. And I guess it's a lot of us just don't as a reader, a lot of us don't understand how important those reviews are. I know, having just published my first book recently and just sitting there with it. Thank you. That's 2 reviews on one and 1 review. And, everyone's like, oh, I bought your book. As far as I can tell, no one's actually reading my book, though. They're buying it, but they're not actually reading it. I will read yours and I'll review it.
Yes, thank you. But yes, every so often I'll send out on Facebook and Instagram, I'll be like, hey, this person posted this review. How about you post a review too? Sometimes that works and I'll get a bunch more, but it's a challenge.
Okay, so are you working on anything currently?
Yes, I'm finally getting close to finishing what I've been calling my India book, which turned out to be about more than India. I had some spiritual friends, take me to India in 2019. And it was a year after I got my heart fixed, which was the underlying cause of my illness. And part of the story is about me reconciling that my body did not automatically get better. I had in my mind like, okay, I'm going to get the oxygen issue fixed. My cells will get oxygen and I'm instantly going to be healed and I'll be totally normal. And that didn't happen. And so having, to reconcile that experience of, which I think a lot is universal, right? We have these expectations, like if I do X, then Y is going to happen. And so I had this long medical saga of like, oh, once I find my answer, my root cause, I'm going to get it fixed. And then the whole rest of the thing's going to fall in line. And that didn't happen. And then so that's one theme that runs through the book. And the other theme is about being awake in this world. Like there's so many books and memoirs out there about the process of spiritual awakening. And they talk about leading up to spiritual awakening. And then the last page, you're like, okay, huzzah, I'm awake. and then the story ends. So this book, it's called Bare Feet, Bare Soul, Mystic Dancing with the Divine. And it actually starts with my spiritual awakening. So that's the beginning of the book. And then what it's like to actually live as an awake person. All your problems don't magically disappear, but you interact with them differently than when we're still suffering. So it's about that. And then it's also about all these amazing miracles I got to experience in India and through the travels there. And that one, I'm still working on it. I work very slow just because my body still has a mind of its own. But I got it back from my editor and he had some really great suggestions. So I'm going through it and I'm hoping to have it released for August 8th is my target release date. I still need to get a cover made and all that, but in the formatting and final editing.
Excellent. It sounds wonderful. I love teaching about India. I'm a sixth grade teacher, so I teach ancient civilization.
Oh,
And
very cool.
India is my favorite. And of course, we teach Buddhism and Hinduism. But I mean, just the geography, I don't know. I just love teaching India, and I've never been. I'll probably never go. But so I'm always envious. I've had a student go to India in January and another student go to Nepal in December. And you've been to India and someone else has been to India. And I'm just like, I just love hearing about it.
I didn't have any desire or plans to go, but my friend, well, it was a couple friends. There's a couple who had lived there for 7 years, and they're very high spiritual beings. And the course of time living there, they met saints, they met what are called Siddha masters, people that have these like supernormal powers, and found these amazing places of power where you can feel very deeply. And they moved back to the US. And then another friend of mine who has a really big school, he worked with them and they created a little tour. So they started doing tours for like 2 to 3 weeks and they take different batches of students. And so when it was getting close to the end of all of his students had a chance to go, he started inviting me. And I was like, nah, I don't need to do that. And then I got another invitation. I was like, maybe I do want to do that. And so I'm so happy that I wound up going. And just, it's such an amazing culture in that everywhere you go, there's divinity. There's an outward, bright, happy expression of connecting with that which is bigger than ourselves. But it's not like in your face kind of way. It's just you're walking down the city street and there's like really all these very 80s office buildings, very flat, square. And then all of a sudden a little temple with bright, beautiful colors and different deities, and then more office buildings. And like even going in the countryside, be driving and be nothing for miles and miles, just fields. And then all of a sudden a little temple. Even on a brand new road that was being built, somebody had set up this little roadside temple because lingam had been found when they were excavating, which is just this very phallic shaped rock. And so they say, oh, it's a Shiva lingam. And it's Shiva's power, God's power manifesting in that place. And so they built a little structure, a little 4x4, 4 foot by 4 foot little structure, literally on the side of this dirt road that they were still building. And it's like, wow, just so the reverence for the divine is so permeated there. And it's just part of everyday life, which was very nice.
Very cool. Well, is there anything else? I mean, we've got a good different entry points into reading your books. I think the one, oh gosh, the word and the light.
Worlds of light, worlds of power, worlds of light.
Worlds of power, no. I've got all my little cheat sheets here. Where is it? Worlds of power, worlds of light. Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to say words. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Worlds of power, worlds of light sounds like a really good entry point for me. Reading about you meeting your your Buddha, your teacher, but certainly the awkward years sounds wonderful for teens. Anything else to
I just want to say, like, anybody out there that's listening that is thinking about writing, you should write. Even if you don't ever plan to share it, journaling and writing and just getting the stuff that's in your head out on paper is such a wonderful way to process and let go of a lot of things, a lot of concepts that sometimes hold us back and keep us stuck in seeing the world in a certain way. So thank you for this podcast. I know it's that you introduce a lot of different authors, and I just want to say anybody out there that's thinking about maybe wanting to write, I just want to encourage you to do it. It's worth it.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. How far back does your writing career, like when did you start writing?
Want to say I was probably like 11 or 12, and I never intended to share it with anybody until high school. And then that's when I got serious about writing. And then even then, I had a really hard English teacher, but she was good because she actually did encourage me in her own way. But I found that as a, preteen and as a teen, anytime I tried to express myself through speech, I always had a really hard time talking to people. Like it would be misinterpreted, or I try to just have, I had really big feelings because I've always been very empathic. So I feel everything. And if I try to talk to somebody about it, they would take it the wrong way, or I wouldn't say it right and they get offended, which made me not want to talk at all. And so writing was a safe place for me, just to, whatever was coming up, I could just put it down on paper in my journal. And then from there, it started coming out more poetic. I have a lot of poetry that I might someday work on. And then actually the Worlds of Power, Worlds of Light was the project that I worked on with my teacher. It probably wasn't the most financially smart thing because my cohorts at the time were working with my teacher on building software and making millions of dollars. And I was like, that computer science stuff, it's okay, but I want to write. This is what I want my project to be. So I worked on that book with him. And so long time been writing.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I remember my first interest was my fifth grade teacher had us create a character. And like we had cut out and created the character out of like construction paper. And then we named the character, and I named mine Chris Miller, and I made her a detective because I was big into Charlie's Angels. Okay. It's way back. So I think I was naming her after like Chris Monroe. Chris. But and I wrote her story, and I think that's where it started, fifth grade.
Wow, that's very cool that you had a whole character and had some development there, and very nice.
Thank you so much for coming and joining me here and talking about your books and your Buddhist background and your history and everything. I really enjoyed hearing about it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and best luck on the podcast. I hope you keep it going for a long time.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to subscribe, like us, read us. Look forward to seeing you next time.